Inside the halls of San Diego State University lies a program dedicated to storytelling and pursuing the truth. Welcome to Where You At, a podcast that takes you inside the work of alumni for the School of Journalism and Media Studies at San Diego State. Our goal is to show the success of our alumni, inspire students with the stories, and connect students and alums on a pathway to journalism success. And now, here's your host, Josh Suchon.
This week on the Where You At podcast, we are staying in America's finest city, San Diego. We're discussing student journalism, public relations, and marketing. Our guest is Kelly Hillock. She attended San Diego State from 2012 through 2016. She was the editor-in-chief of the daily Aztec, and I always get so excited, all the warm, fuzzy feelings whenever I get to talk to a fellow editor-in-chief. These days, she is the marketing manager, content strategy for national funding. Kelly, great to meet you, and welcome to the Where You At podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yes, I believe that you are the fifth different Daily Aztec editor-in-chief who has joined this podcast now. It is my goal to get us up to at least a dozen, if not more. So it is always super fun to connect and share some more stories about student journalism, plus what we're doing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a special club, that's for sure.
Well, let's start with what you are doing these days for national funding. Let's start right there. What is national funding and what do you do? Give us sort of like a normal week for what you do for them.
Yeah, so national funding is in the finance space. We're an alternative lender for small businesses. So I'm the content strategy manager. I like to joke that I'm like a glorified copywriter. So I do a lot of writing and editing across all channels. So everything on our website, email, digital ads, print ads, and direct mail is kind of my purview. I also do a lot of SEO work, which is a challenging space for us right now. So any given week consists of a lot of writing, a lot of editing, brainstorming content ideas, overseeing our blogs. I also manage 3 in-house blogs. So really, really just a lot of writing. Again, the glorified copywriter is what I do.
In terms of hours and remote versus being inside an office, I always think it's important for students to kind of understand, what life is like now on these different things. So give us some more details about kind of work-life balance and how you're able to make all of that work.
Yeah, so my company is based in San Diego, so I go into the office once a week, which is really nice to get out of the house a little bit. And the rest of the week, I'm working from home, where I'm at right now. I live in University Heights, so love being at home. And as a writer, it really gives me that like dedicated time to focus without many distractions besides the distractions of being at home. So to me, like that's a good split. And of course, having entered the workforce pre-pandemic, jumping from working full-time in an office to then going fully remote for several years, I'm really enjoying the hybrid space.
So you mentioned lots of writing, lots of editing. So this all comes back to being a journalism major. I always like to ask people why they chose San Diego State and when the journalism bug got them. So let's hear your story on that.
Yeah, so I'm actually a second generation Aztec. My entire family graduated from SDSU, which, is very special to me. But also, I like to say that SDSU kind of chose me. I just kind of ended up there and ended up falling in love with it. How could you not fall in love with SDSU? And I originally started as a marketing major, but halfway through my first semester freshman year, was almost failing stats. Very, very quickly pivoted to the School of Journalism, where I found public relations. It was really exactly what I was looking for. I mean, I've always loved writing, and I wanted like a major that would let me really develop those skills, and public relations was just an easy fit for that. So very, very quickly made that change and never looked back.
I can definitely relate to struggling with a basic statistics class. And so I feel like there's a lot of journalists who are like, okay, I have a calculator for a reason. Let me focus on writing and editing and these things. Need to know more about second generation Aztec. Were your parents the type that put clothes on you at an early age and dressed you up in Aztec gear? Did they take you to games? Did they take you on campus to kind of like show you around and kind of hint, this is where we want you to go? Or tell us more about being a second generation Aztec.
They really did not put any pressure on me or my brother to go to SDSU. We did explore campus several times throughout my childhood. I grew up in Temecula, so I spent, pretty much my entire life coming down to San Diego. But there wasn't a ton of pressure. It just kind of worked out that way. And I feel like once you tour campus, you're like, oh yeah, I want to be here.
Tell us more about just the most memorable moments at San Diego State, whether that's classes, professors, other classmates, different activities. You were very active when you were on campus, is what I see from your LinkedIn. Tell us more about just your college experience and how it benefited you.
Yeah, so I was involved with the Daily Aztec all 4 years. I started out as a writer on the features section and held many different positions over the course of 4 years until ultimately I was editor-in-chief. So that's really like the backbone of my college experience, which I really loved. I mean, as anyone involved with the student newspaper will tell you, just the amount of exposure you get to different types of people on campus is amazing. I'm exposed to Dr. Seth Malios, the campus historian. I interviewed him twice, which I loved. Sporting events, the arts programs, just like the breadth and depth of experiences you get exposed to as a student journalist really enhances that college experience. Because I feel like most students stay in their lane. They're involved in whatever club they're involved in. And of course, mine was the Daily Aztec, but it gave me the opportunity just to meet so many different kinds of people.
I always think it's an interesting snapshot of what was happening in the world, what was happening on campus. Are there any particular major stories or even minor stories that you remember when you think about the stories that you wrote past tense and sort of where we were in time during your time in college?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the issues that, the student body faced when I was on campus are still persistent, still prevalent. So 2 stories that stand out to me are my team and I published a front page editorial on gun violence. There were a couple school shootings at college campuses during my senior year. And so we were moved to write a front page editorial, condemning gun violence, obviously, but also, calling on the university for campus safety and that we really needed that enhanced campus safety and students had a right to feel safe on campus. So we ran it on the front page. During my time, we were running once a week, every Wednesday in print. And it was pretty early-ish in the morning when Greg Block, the chief communications officer at the time, called me directly. Said, Kelly, I saw the front page editorial. I would love to invite your staff to attend an active shooter training, which was awesome, an awesome response. And, I think I look back on that now and I'm like, if only our government or at large could have such a fast response to student journalists.
Okay. There's a lot of things that made me really smile because Greg and I worked at the Daily Aztec together. One of my closest friends, terrible story about how he died. I don't want to get into that because I'll start crying. But I want to follow up on just the idea that we're going to take a chance here, right? You don't put editorials on the front page of newspapers very often. And sort of the discussions for you and other people in the newsroom about what we're going to do, why we're going to do this, and then give us more details on the follow-up that came from that.
Yeah, I think it was obviously a very hot topic in our newsroom. It felt very close to home as we were all students on a college campus. And it might have been our advisor at the time, Jay Harn, who suggested that we put it on the front page because we were already in the process of drafting an editorial in our editorial meeting. And it was suggested to us that we put it on the front page. And I think we had a moment where we're like, can we do that? Is that something we're allowed to do? But of course, we're an independent newspaper. We can do, whatever we want. That's the beauty of being a fully independent newsroom is that you're able to kind of take those risks. So we ran it.
Yeah, being the fully independent college newspaper, man, I look back and since I was the editor-in-chief the 95-96 school year, and at the time, it just seemed normal because I didn't know any better. And then I look back now and I'm like, man, that was a lot of responsibility that I had, that we had. I can't believe that people trusted me. And so if you reflect back on your time as the editor-in-chief and sort of how fast you grow up and what it means to have that type of responsibility at that age.
Yeah, I mean, I think being editor-in-chief is probably the hardest job I'll ever have. Like, it is so crazy to put that much responsibility on a 21-year-old, a full-time student. Like, it's truly insane to me, but it's also a gift in many ways. But also, the Daily Aztec has struggled, just like newsrooms across the country. Like, the Daily Aztec is no different to that. And I really took very seriously the shepherding of this 100-year-old institution for the next generation. When I was a student, it felt very precarious in terms of our funding, the support we had from the School of JMS and the support we had from the university felt very light, I guess you could say. Maybe we weren't going to be here for too much longer. With the new advisor position, I know that the Daily Aztec now has, and that it has a more close relationship with the School of JMS. I really hope that future editors and staff members don't feel that stress that I did.
You mentioned funding, and this is a good segue into what you do now when it comes to what you did as a student to try to raise money to help preserve student journalism. Give us more details about steps that you took in order to try to make sure that the resources were there for student journalists when you were there.
Yeah, so, it was a little controversial for me to be a PR major in the editor-in-chief role. Maybe controversial is a strong word, but just unexpected. But I think I was really able to bring a lot of my public relations skills that I was learning in the classroom to the role. So one of my big initiatives as editor-in-chief was to launch a alumni newsletter. I tracked down someone in the development office and got a list of Daily Aztec alumni. Started a monthly email newsletter just to kind of connect alumni to what current student journalists were doing. And from that, I worked with the development office to launch a fundraising campaign asking alumni for donations, even though journalists notoriously do not have tons of extra cash. So I was very impressed that we were able to raise $5,000 to, just go directly into our newsroom and help us with labor. Some of our staff are paid, our editors are paid part-time, printing costs, et cetera. Just the overall cost of running a newsroom.
I think it's a good thing that you did that. I think that we have to continue to think outside the box in terms of how we go about making sure the resources are there. And I kind of wish that you had found me so that I could have donated, even if it's just a little bit, because I just know how much me and my friends feel passionately about student journalism and the impact that it had on us, regardless of whether or not we stayed in journalism or not. And so I'm not sure where I'm going with the question with this, other than that I think that it's just really good that you did that, because like you said, it's 100+ years of tradition, and it's a really important tradition.
It really is. I take so seriously the importance of having an institution like the Daily Aztec on campus. Not many universities can say they've had an independent newspaper for however long it's been now, 114 years. It's been a long time. Like, that is so incredible and so important to the community at large, especially when we look at the state of journalism across the country that is struggling to reinvent itself. Having this not only like learning ground for the next generation, but also the first voice. I mean, we're the voice of the campus and the students, and that is so incredibly important to have.
Okay, so you mentioned how, let's use the word unusual. Unusual it was for a PR student to be editor-in-chief. And I want to start this next question by setting up. I was back on campus last week and I was moderating a panel discussion. So I wanted to get to know, like, who are the students who are in attendance who are listening to this? And so I said, okay, just raise your hand if you know exactly what you want to do with your life when you finish in college. And like 2% raised their hand. And then I said, well, who's got a pretty good idea, but they're not sure? And it was, maybe like 50% raised their hand. And so, okay, we got a pretty good idea. I said, who has no idea? And once again, it was in the neighborhood of like 25 to 30%, maybe a little bit more. Anyway, so so talking to students that day, talking to them afterwards, and there very much became just this, okay, there's all of these things that you potentially could do, but like, where do you actually start? And so where do you go? And so based on that, let's get into, where did you start? What was your idea of transitioning from a student to a professional? And I have this background as the editor-in-chief of working for a newspaper. I also did PR. just kind of tell us how you navigated deciding what you're ultimately going to do.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I spent all 4 years in college thinking I wanted to work at a PR agency and go that route, which looking back, I'm kind of amazed. My friends and family believed me, having been a writer for 4 years on campus. So it's really not a surprise I ended up where I did. So I interned at a couple PR agencies and very quickly realized that that wasn't really what I wanted to do, and kind of transitioned into more writing focused copywriting roles on marketing teams. I spent several years in nonprofits in my early career, and then made the switch to the finance industry. Never really expected I would end up working in the finance industry, but I've come to really, really like it, and really like the challenge of communicating out to customers, these kind of harder to understand concepts.
I saw on your LinkedIn that you also worked for the San Diego Symphony. That sounds like a very fun, interesting place to work as well. Give us more details about working for them.
Yeah, I worked there pretty soon, but probably a year or so after graduating college. So I was a pretty recent college graduate. I have a passion for the arts. Like I really love the art scene in San Diego, especially. So it was just so fun to be in one of the leading, arts organizations here in San Diego, another historic institution, and just really fun. I got to go to a lot of concerts, got to write about classical music, learn a lot. I also worked, and one of my colleagues was a former JMS graduate, Stephanie Zumwalt. So we worked together, and there's really no friendship like the friendships you have at your early 20s jobs, right?
So a lot of the different things that you've done just involve writing. This is going to be just kind of a basic question, but what is it that you love about writing? When you sit down and your fingers start typing, what are the different just like feelings, sensations, enjoyment that you get when you're writing?
That's a great question. I feel like any writer will tell you they fell in love with writing at an early age. I'm truly no different. I, was a huge bookworm as a kid, and very quickly started writing my own little stories and keeping a journal, and, has really been a lifelong creative outlet and passion of mine. Professionally, I would say, like now that I do it professionally, it is trying to kind of evolved into more. I love the storytelling aspect of it, and I love the communication aspect of it. It's always, how can we effectively communicate what we're trying to say out in a way that's memorable and engaging, and all of those challenges, into a 50-word email or something, or a headline. Like, it's always a challenge trying to distill those ideas, but it's a fun challenge, and it's something I really enjoy doing.
I read something the other day that I should have known a long time ago, but I just recently learned it, was that nowadays there are so many ways that our eyeballs can go that 90% of what you do is the headline and the photo. That's about luring people in. And I've always thought of it backwards, right? I want to write something, and then when I'm done, oh yeah, now I need to slap a headline on this. And so since you just brought up the word headline, that makes me think about this. How does your mind go? Do you go story, headline? Are you constantly thinking headline? And especially when you're taking something like finance, what are the different like power words that you want to use to try to draw people in?
I have always found writing headlines challenging. I did in the newsroom of the Daily Aztec. I do still to this day. And usually I find myself writing everything that needs to be, like, writing the body copy first, and then going back and pulling out those kind of main ideas or keywords that really stand out to me and writing the headline. So I do it backwards. Because it's challenging. It's like, what is getting someone's attention? What is aligning with what you're trying to get across, and what's in like the larger body, and what's also very concise and short.
Advice for students. What are some of the pieces of advice that you would either offer students now, or you wish that you knew when you were a freshman at San Diego State?
Well, of course, my advice is going to be to write for the Daily Aztec, of course. That was really like my greatest teacher in all 4 years at SDSU. I loved being in the School of Journalism, but I think the biggest skills and lessons I walked away from, I learned in the newsroom. And I'm sure a lot of former Daily Aztec staff members would say the same. So that's truly my biggest advice.
Well, that's a good segue into what I also wanted to make sure that we let people know about is that there's a Facebook page. It's the Daily Aztec alumni page. And let's see, I'll give the backstory of it. So it was started by Greg Block. Greg's name was mentioned by Kelly earlier in this podcast. He was the chief communications officer. Greg and I, again, he's one of my closest friends. We went to the college at the same time, Daily Aztec at the same time. Greg started the page. Greg passed away in 2021, and he was the only administrator of the page. And once he passed away, there were some things that started to pop up on the page that we didn't want on there and we didn't know how to get rid of. And even talking to Greg's wife, Rachel, in terms of finding like passwords and being able to get in to delete these things so that this was not showing up on the page was quite the challenge. And then Kelly, you and I believe others were able to take hold and become administrators. You take over the story from here about what you did next and the current state of this Daily Aztec alumni page on Facebook.
Well, thank you, Josh. I do appreciate the shout out, though it really wasn't that big of a lift on my part. I really don't know how I was able to become an administrator. I just got a notification that I was added as an admin, so that's still unclear to me. But once I had the capabilities, I just went through and cleaned up the bots, blocked a lot of bot accounts, removed them all, and took the group to be private. So we won't have that moving forward. I mean, as touched on earlier, that alumni engagement is something I really am interested in and do love. And the Daily Aztec alumni Facebook group is really the only avenue we all have to stay in touch. So I'm glad I was able to make it usable again.
Yes, I'm grateful that you're able to make it usable again too. I know you have enough going on with your work, but I feel like this is something that we can feel like anytime you have like a Facebook page, kind of goes through these waves where everyone's like on it a lot, and then it kind of is like a tumbleweed for a few months. What are you hoping that alums can do to connect with one another on this page so that we are aware of different things happening, whether it's within journalism or specifically on campus?
That's a great question. I mean, I would love to see, more awareness about what the current Daily Aztec staff is doing. And I'm not sure if there's any current or recent graduates in that group, but maybe that's the first step. Because I really love keeping up with what the current staff is doing. And I think that's something other former staff members would love to see. And, I think it's also just a great networking opportunity. I mean, anyone who says that they work for the Daily Aztec, as I'm sure you feel the same, it's an immediate connection and an immediate, sense of camaraderie. So
yeah, absolutely. All right. Anything else that I should have asked you that I forgot to ask you that you just think is important in this conversation about student journalism and what you do now before we wrap things up here?
I did have another story to share about a popular like breaking news story when
let's hear it.
We covered a lot of Title IX sexual assault stories on campus, which is unfortunately something that I think is still something you see on campuses still. So this was a developing story when I was editor-in-chief. I was sitting in a journalism class with a lot of my editors. Of course, we all had all of our classes together. When we got word that there was a development in this breaking story. So my photo editor and my news editor immediately jumped up and ran out the class to cover the story, along with, I think, another news writer. And I looked around and I was the only person on staff still in class. And I said, well, I fully know my team is fully capable. They got it covered. Someone has to stay in class to get the notes. So that is now my job. And so I stayed, took the notes while they covered that story excellently. I will say, of course, they got it up very quickly. And it was just a really quintessential moment of being a student journalist, right? Where it's like sometimes the news takes more priority than class.
By any chance, do you recall what either the professor's reaction was or for the students who were not working at the Daily Aztec and what their reaction was when they saw people leave because they had a story to cover?
The professor was very, very understanding. I believe she said, yes, of course, leave. This takes priority. I think the student journalists who were involved, or the students who were involved with the Daily Aztec, totally understood, but there was definitely a few confused, probably PR majors or maybe advertising majors who were, kind of like, what's happening?
I think back to those times when I would walk into a classroom, and I'm much older than you. And so we still published 5 days a week. And just the thrill that I had of the Daily Aztec is just being read while we're waiting for class to start. Or even if it just gets discarded and left on the ground or on a desk, I'm like, okay, that's fine. Someone else is going to read that. But then also the number of times when the conversation would steer toward, what the Daily Aztec is doing. And so you'd start to cringe like, where is this going to go next? But overall, I think it was just a sense of pride, like you mentioned before, that this is the voice, whether you like what's being printed today or tomorrow or not, that this is the voice, and we're not perfect, but we're doing our best. And it's an important feature of campus life that this newspaper is here for these reactions, however these reactions might be. And, I just think, again, it's just some of my fondest memories is just walking into a classroom and realizing that paper is there. Someone read it, someone left it, and someone else is going to read it. And that is so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so special and so important, and something I've really, come to appreciate even more as I've, in the 8 years since I've graduated.
Well, I don't know if people are sharing their phones or their tablets or however they get the news for student journalists anymore, but whatever it is, hopefully they can continue to make us proud of what they're doing. Before we wrap things up, time to brag about other San Diego State alums. You can mention as many as you want who are doing things out there that are making us proud. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, so I mentioned I worked closely with Stephanie Zumwalt at the San Diego Symphony. We were in the School of Journalism together. She now does email marketing for Holland Cruises up in Seattle, which is amazing. My best friend is Natalie Mason. We were also overachieving college seniors together. She was the president of PRSSA when I was editor-in-chief, so our house was always very stressed. She now does internal communications for Google, and I'm incredibly proud of her. And lastly, Bree Lugens, also a PR graduate, works in the CEO's office at Seattle Children's Hospital. I'm lucky to say these are all my close friends, and it is just such a joy to watch your friends go from being college students together to now, successful in all their careers.
Oh, I love all three of those stories. I'm going to add one more. I believe that you worked with Ryan Posner at the Daily Aztec. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so Ryan left San Diego. He was working for a minor league baseball team called the Sugarland Skeeters, who then became the Sugarland Space Cowboys, and that's where I met Ryan. And then he got called up to the major leagues himself. He is now doing public relations for the Houston Astros. In fact, when I went to Houston this summer, I had a day free, and I was able to attend a game with another Daily Aztec alum named Ferris Sharistani, and the great Ryan Posner got us free tickets. So shout out to Ryan for getting us free tickets and for fulfilling his dream of getting called up to the major leagues. Way to go, Ryan.
That's awesome. I love to hear that.
All right, Kelly, thanks so much for your time. Enjoyed the stroll down memory lane. I always love connecting with another former Daily Aztec editor-in-chief, and we will keep making the Daily Aztec alumni Facebook page grow, and hopefully we get lots more interactions on there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Josh. It's been a pleasure.
Once again, that is Kelly Hillock, and my name is Josh Suchon. I'm the host of the Where You At podcast. We publish new episodes every Wednesday. We will talk to you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Where Ya At podcast. This is Devin Watley from the class of 2021. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know where you at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the school. There's many ways you can do this, from donating your time or money, mentoring students, to even speaking in classrooms in person or on Zoom. Your work can help us grow the program and create more opportunities for our students to succeed. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs.